Hello, my program the topic that is city creation basically are discussing on the topic that is vitamins basically we are creating one of the part we are taking about the topic that is blood cells groups owners group. So one person basically started getting problem. Then basically this all group basically can't solve the problem basically. Government also basically can't solve the problem. And government basically are responsible whatever incidents basically is going to happen in city and they have to give the answer one day. So assume that basically this all group basically was not able to solve the problem because that's why basically the slowly incidents basically converts into third world war. So this is basically army group basically now basically they connects to the army group basically because the problem basically was not able to solve. Now basically what will happen basically army groups basically also have the peace group basically. They also basically go with the peace department. So the entire department basically connects to the army group also basically. Same thing basically connects to the army group. Then also basically the problem is not getting solved. Then the army groups basically connects to the local loafers that are basically mafia group basically you can say groups, and they basically start doing problem basically in cities basically because now basically the started problem creating in city. Now basically the police department basically comes into the picture basically and they basically do the FIR against the dhamal basically whatever things basically was created by this group basically. Now basically the case basically has registered and the police department and the government departments also basically connects to the this everything group basically and they basically visit the city and then basically the army groups are basically allocated for this particular local dhamal basically which was done by the mafia group and that particular person basically is of that particular local city basically where the dhamal is happening basically because the problem basically started from this particular person. This group basically were not able to solve the problem. Then it connects to the army group. The army groups also basically not able army groups also basically have this all group basically. This all groups also army also groups have government basically. They also basically not able to solve the problem. Then basically it connects to army group that is the then basically it connects to the army group connects to the local group that is the mafia group basically that are loafer group basically. Then the loafer group basically do the dhamal. Then basically that small dhamal basically after that small dhamal also basically which was happened in the city basically the case gets registered basically in the police department. See basically the police department up to what level things basically are. Then basically the police department registered the case. Then basically the police department say that basically the case is basically not solved still basically. Then basically the police department basically spreads the case to the across the international level basically because this blood group basically have international group also. This blood group basically have international people also basically. This blood group have basically the international people also basically. Now basically the international group basically starts activating because this person basically have 100 crore people basically in his account basically. So they basically starts army group basically transfers the case that is the passes the case to international court basically that is the international court department that is the court and the court department basically passes the data to the same thing basically happens here. They also basically gives to the medical department, then peace department, temples department, friends groups, then basically the currency department, then basically the human needs department because business basically is connected with business men basically are the sales group basically that are basically not doing basically the normal stuff basically because all human needs basically connects to that basically. So one of the person told that basically the army international group basically do this all stuff basically again. Then also basically the problem not solved basically. Then basically the army registers the case in international level basically. The problem basically is still not solved basically. Then basically the international court basically comes into the police department basically comes into the picture basically and the blood group basically owner basically this group basically start doing the war basically in international level basically, and that is basically with the help of the medical department basically. That is the why that problem basically is not getting solved basically of this particular person basically, because this problem is going to connect to this blood group one day. So just see basically the things are basically connecting. So the small issue basically connected to international level and the war basically started. That is basically the First World War basically is done. Second World War. First basically the local war basically happens. Basically first basically the local war basically happens. Local war means basically assume that basically the medical department, assume that basically this person basically got some problem, it passed to the medical department, then peace department, then the currency department, then the French department, then the temple department, then basically the all groups basically, then the army department, local army, Indian, assume that basically this person basically got the problem, basically is from Indian army, Indian person basically, and then basically the army group basically pass to the local groups, then basically the local groups also basically creates their context, and then basically he connects to this whole department, then also the problem basically down solve basically, then basically the army group basically do the local war basically, that is the Kargil war basically. Assume that basically that is a Kargil war basically. Assume that basically this person basically is Asian country basically. So Asian war basically starts basically. Then also the problem basically doesn't solve basically. Then basically they pass the data to the international code basically, that is international codes. It passed to the international codes basically. So this passed to the international codes. Then international codes basically passes the international code also basically do this all process basically again. Then basically it passed to the army department. Then army department basically again do this whole process basically. This whole process basically. International courts means this comes to High Court, then basically the Supreme Courts, of India, because assume that basically this is India. Then basically the High Court and Supreme Court basically data passes to the Asia courts. Asia courts also basically pass the data. Then basically it passes to international level. So basically the problem basically if has reached to the international level basically, that means the problem is very big basically, and this is going to convert to the world war basically. Lots of people say that why basically the world war basically once started. So that basically problem basically starts with the small problem basically. That was this problem basically. This problem, this person basically problem is not solved. So it going to connect one day to this person basically, that is 100% sure basically. Then basically this single problem basically, that's why basically nobody ignores any of the cases basically. Nobody ignores any of the cases. For example, one person is searching for girl basically, he is not getting the girl basically for marriage. As the time was time getting passed, that is called as a time pass basically happening, then that time pass basically converts to third world war basically. And slowly basically if the problem basically is very big now basically, it converts to end of nationality also basically. That is this. That is this basically. So that basically might also happen one day basically. That also basically might happen one day, and that will happen basically. Mark my words basically, that is going to happen basically. So next video basically we are going to see that nationality going to end how.